Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this sunny and smoky morning. My name is Jessica Leclerc. I'm a Senior Program Director with Sustainable CT. And today we're joined by Danica Doroski of the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, who's going to walk us through resources that her agency has to help your city and town navigate Action 3.9, manage woodlands and urban forests. So she's got a lot of great opportunities available for you that she's going to describe. So we're really looking forward to that. And I want to just pause before we turn it over to Danica to let you know that this is a part of our Climate Leadership Designation webinar series. And we've had a host of events over the past several months. So I'm going to just share a screen here. And we'll put a link to this in the chat. But you can see we've had many events of many different topical areas. So if any of these are of interest and you missed them, please visit the site and you can go in and watch the recording. We'll also put a recording of today's event on this website as well. We have one more webinar coming up in the series. We might add a few more, but the next one scheduled is July 13th, Planning for Extreme Heat, how to use CIRCA's Climate Change Vulnerability Index. So just in time for summer, learning about how we can not be so hot over the course of the next couple of months. It should be a good webinar, so please register using the link here if interested. All right, so I'm going to stop the share. And one more thing for me, on the line we have our Sustainable CT Fellows. So these are undergraduate students and graduate students who are out across the state who just started last week. They're here to help your towns as you work through certification, as you're preparing your application, or if you're not working towards certification this summer, they might be able to help you with other sustainability related events that you have going on over the next few months. If you're interested in working with a fellow, please feel free to email us at info@sustainablect.org and we can connect you with that fellow immediately. So with that, I want to turn it over to Danica, who's going to talk about the resources that they have available at Connecticut DEEP. So Danica, thanks so much for sharing your time with us this morning.
Thanks, Jess. Let me pull up my PowerPoint and get myself into presenter mode. Screen's all good?
Looks great.
Okay, awesome, cool. So thank you. And I don't know, Jess and Torrin, how you guys usually handle these. I'm totally comfortable if people have questions during the course of the presentation of being interrupted, so we can address those questions in real time. So I guess if you want to, I probably won't be monitoring the chat, but maybe Torrin and Jess, if you guys are keeping an eye on it, you can just flag for me if there's any time sensitive questions. Awesome.
Will do.
Cool. All right. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so thrilled to see so many participants on this morning's call. I'm going to talk, as Jess said, about Action 3.9, Managing Woodlands and Urban Forests. I am the State Urban Forester with Connecticut DEEP. And so my program provides assistance to communities all over our state. The program is urban and community forestry. So that means whether you're Hartford or you're Sprague, we are, working with these large and small communities all over our state to help them manage forests that are in close interface with human populations. So I'm going to just give you a quick overview of where we're headed. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Action 3.9 is, and I'm going to talk about how it's changed. Some of you may have participated in the previous iteration of Action 3.9. We did do some adjustments, and I want to explain why we did those and what those mean for completing this action now. I'm going to talk very briefly about why I think you all should pursue Action 3.9, and then we'll spend the bulk of this presentation talking about what resources are available. So Action 3.9, Manage Woodlands and Urban Forests, is planning and implementing projects that increase tree cover, enhance tree and forest health, and that ensure equitable distribution of tree cover and access to woodlands. And there's a series of sort of actions that you can complete as part of 3.9. And I'm going to walk through each of these in greater detail later, but essentially you need to have a forest advisory committee. You need to, in some way, examine tree cover at the municipal level. So this is taking the bird's eye, that 10,000 foot view of tree cover in your city. Review municipal policies and priorities related to trees in your community. To complete a tree inventory, a forest management plan, and then to implement 2 best management practices. And I'll elaborate on what we mean by best management practices. Action 3.9 has changed a little bit from the previous version, and this was in large part to acknowledge the really strong relationship that we see between tree cover and income. You may be familiar with some tools that have come out in some recent publications. I have a table here from a nationwide study that was done by researchers at the Nature Conservancy that looked at tree cover and temperature in communities all over the United States, and really found that on average, low-income communities have less tree cover than their higher income communities. And that's related to temperature. And I pulled this table out because one thing that was really striking for me about that study is that here in Connecticut, of the 10 worst disparities, so basically the 10 biggest differences between tree cover in our poorest blocks and our wealthiest blocks, 5 of those are here in Connecticut. So we have a lot of work that we need to do to try and rectify these inequities. I will say that these inequities are things we observe typically in some of our larger cities and are less present in some of our more rural towns. But regardless, we really wanted to focus Action 3.9 to encourage municipalities to really think about where tree cover is in their cities and towns, and more importantly, where it isn't, so that they can direct investments and make sure that everyone who's living in that community has equitable access to tree cover. The other thing we wanted to change is we wanted to refocus the action so that they encouraged more data-driven forest management. Obviously urban forestry, people tend to think planting trees, and I love planting trees and think it's great. But I think what's really important is understanding where you need to be planting those trees, what types of trees you need to be planting, how those trees are going to address some of your equity issues. And so we refocus this action so that we could encourage municipalities to not just get out there with their shovels, but to actually get out there and see what trees are there already, where there are big canopy gaps, maybe what species are being overutilized, so that we can encourage kind of a diverse and sustainable forest into the future. I think everyone should pursue Action 3.9. We know forests are such an incredible tool. I've been thinking a lot about our trees lately with these air quality issues that we've been having. Trees are really effective at taking up particulate matter from the atmosphere. And so this, these really fine particulates that we're getting from these wildfires out in Canada, a lot of that matter is being absorbed by our trees. And I've been seeing that, in some of the big cities like New York City, the air quality levels are so much worse. And it makes me, I think a lot of that probably has to do with the lack of tree cover and the fact that we don't have that kind of built-in air filtration system. Forests, I'm not going to go into great detail about this, but also provide a lot of other benefits in terms of cleaning water, providing wildlife value. They're a great climate change tool because as trees grow, they store and sequester carbon, which is a major greenhouse gas. And trees are also really great for our economy. Forest management at times, people can have a really negative perception about, removing trees, but using trees for things like timber, lumber, and is a great renewable resource that is really important for local economies. And we have a lot of municipalities here in Connecticut that are doing forest management on town forests, and they're using the income that's generated from that forest management to control invasives and to promote forest health in other ways. Thinking more specifically about sort of our urban forests, our forests that, like I said, are in close proximity to people, also, provide a lot of really important values just to urban populations. There's a lot of interest in urban forestry from the public health community, and that's because there's really strong linkages between reduced rates of cardiac disease, strokes, asthma, and even sort of stress and mental health and urban tree cover. And trees, especially in cities where a lot of our cities, have combined sewer systems, meaning when we get any amount of rain, we're kind of inundating our stormwater systems and sending polluted water right into our waterways. Urban trees are a really great way to absorb that stormwater and offset some of the impacts, help our water quality, and reduce that flooding. And, I saw, Jess mentioned the conversation with Circa later about, temperatures and keeping our cities cool. Heat is the #1 weather-related cause of death here in Connecticut. And that's because our cities get a lot hotter than our surrounding rural areas. Hartford, there was a study, they found that Hartford can get up to 20 degrees hotter on the average summer day than surrounding rural areas. And that has major impacts on our communities, especially communities, vulnerable populations like the elderly, or communities that don't have access to air conditioning, or having their air conditioning running all the time is really cost prohibitive. So trees do an important part to keep our cities cooler, and so really are just such a critical piece of green infrastructure. And I think no surprise that they are part of this Climate Leader Designation because of the role that they play. So at the, thinking very broadly, there's 2 programs I'm going to talk about today in terms of the resources that are available to help your community complete Action 3.9. The first is my program, the Urban Forestry Program, and we advise, assist, and provide resources to municipalities, nonprofits, and residents throughout our state with the goal of helping them to grow and to maintain their urban and community forests. The other program I'm going to highlight is the Service Forestry Program. The Service Forestry Program is focused very much on providing technical advice and assistance to woodlot owners, but is relevant to Action 3.9 because those woodlot owners can include municipalities. So if your town or your municipality has town-owned forests, even schools that have wooded areas that comprise a large area around them, those areas are all forests that can qualify through the Service Forestry Program for a visit from a service forester to get some management recommendations and to kind of walk through and talk to you a little bit about what's going on with a forest there. So now I'm going to kind of go through each of the actions, or excuse me, each of the steps that you can complete as part of this action, and talk about, some resources that are available. The first step to this action is to establish a forest advisory committee. And obviously this is really important because there needs to be some local interest in the program in order for any of these actions to be completed. And a forest advisory committee can look like a lot of different things. We do have cities that have, really formal tree commissions or nonprofit entities that kind of fill that role. But also a lot of our towns just have conservation commissions that have sort of like a small sect that focuses on trees in public space. So it can be as formal or as informal as suits the need of your city or town, but just needs to have some sort of focus of trees on public lands. And if you're just getting started, or even if you already have an established tree advisory committee and would like some guidance or some an opportunity for me to come and speak, I come to tree committee meetings all of the time to talk about what urban forestry is, to provide some management recommendations, and to help people kind of focus their organization. So if you have a new group starting out or one that's more established, please do invite me if it would be helpful to come out and meet with you all and talk a little bit about mission and goals for your program. The next step to this action is to examine tree cover. And we really wanted to include this piece because we wanted to really encourage municipalities to take a holistic view of tree cover in their municipality. Often we see that there's a big focus on town greens, for example, which again is great. Town greens get a lot of traffic. They're, high visibility areas. We should certainly be protecting our trees on those town greens. But we wanted to encourage municipalities to not just think about those high traffic areas that people are always walking by, but actually look at the municipality as a whole and think about where are there trees, where are there not trees, where could there be trees, and then also what types of trees are there. So this image here, this is a aerial view of the city of New Haven. This is high resolution land cover data that is showing you the dark green, what is tree cover. The lighter green is showing you where there's grasses or shrubs. And then, you know, the red is pavement. As you get into those oranges and yellows, that's more impervious surface. I'm going to show you all how to use this map. This is a map that is available to every single municipality in Connecticut. But some things that I noticed when I look at this map, for example, are areas where we see there's a high concentration of the red and the orange. These are communities that are going to be really hot in the summer because there's just not as much tree cover. There's a lot of impervious surface, not a lot of access to tree cover. And that's in contrast to neighborhoods like this one, where you can see there's much more green. Another kind of interesting thing to see, and I'll zoom in on this when I show you all the online resource, but you can also start to discern different types of tree cover. So, you know, where you see these lots of trees or lots of dark green clustered together, those are woodlands. Those are forests in cities. Those are like, full-fledged forests, not just trees along the right of way, but this, for example, if you're familiar with New Haven, is West Rock Park. This is the very tip of East Rock Park. And those are a big source of tree cover that I think we tend to forget about in our cities. But when you look at a map like this, I think it's easy to recognize that those are clearly a really important form of tree cover in our cities, and ones that often are in need of investment, whether that's invasive management, vine control, whatever. The other thing you'll notice then are the trees that are kind of along straight lines, and those are going to be our trees that are along the right of way or along people's backyards. And these tree cover maps or tree cover assessments can kind of be distilled down then into really useful chunks for management, where you can see this map here. This is that same aerial view of New Haven, but what we've done here is we've looked at the percentage of tree cover as compared with non-tree cover at the neighborhood level. And so this, for the city of New Haven is a super useful tool because it allows them to pinpoint the communities where tree cover is really, really low compared to the communities where tree cover is much higher. So you can see Long Wharf, that area that I highlighted before that was mostly red and orange, has just 3% urban tree cover. And that's in comparison to a neighborhood like Westville, where we see 51%. And so when you're thinking then about, evaluating your community and thinking about where you want to target your investments, having these maps is really useful. And for the purposes of sustainable CT and completing Action 3.9, there is a worksheet that guides you through this process so that you can do this for your own community. So I'm going to highlight now, and I'm going to sort of have to be a little bit awkward and toggle between my PowerPoint and online websites, but I wanted to just show you all some resources that are available for you to examine tree cover. I'll be sharing this PowerPoint afterwards, so you'll have access to all of these links. But the University of Vermont, which is really the pioneer in these tree cover assessments, has done some tree cover assessments for some of our major cities like Hartford, the greater Bridgeport area, which includes sections of Fairfield, I think, and Stratford, and New Haven. If you're not in one of those larger cities, every single municipality is included in CLEAR's Center for let me switch here. I can't talk and toggle between my computer screen at the same time. So I'm just gonna, here we go. So now you all are seeing, hopefully, my internet screen. So Connecticut, the CLEAR, the CT Eco site through Yukon CLEAR is home to this really incredible data set of, this is high resolution land cover data for our entire state. High resolution, meaning it's at 1 meter resolution. And this is in comparison to most land cover data sets, which are at 30 meter resolution. For urban trees, you really need that 1 meter resolution, because if you think about like a single tree growing in a backyard or along the street, that's not going to be captured at 30 meters. You need that high resolution. So I'm just going to show you all how to use this tool very quickly, because it's a really useful one, particularly if you're not in one of our larger cities that has the UVM data set. So I just zoomed into New Haven. Here you can see, what am I doing? Oh, here we go. I have to move this over. Okay, here you can see the legend. And so this is just a different color scheme than what I was showing you before, but it's showing you the white is impervious cover. The dark green is what they've called mixed forest, but for all intents and purposes, you can think of that as, just tree cover. And then it's showing you areas that are, developed open space. If you're GIS savvy or have someone in your program that's GIS savvy, this is all a data set that you can download and adjust on your own. So you can adjust how many different land cover classes you want to see. But if you're not, this online tool works great and is a really useful tool for zooming in and seeing basically, really seeing with stark examples of where there's a lack of tree cover and, where there is what we would consider maybe acceptable tree cover. Let me pause for a minute and just see if there's any questions up until this point. I'm a fast talker, so if you need me to slow down or repeat anything, just let me know. Is there any questions I need to address up to this point?
One question in the chat is from Mary Hogue. Where on the CLEAR website do you get this?
It's going to take me too long to show you in this conversation. The PowerPoint I'm going to send out has a chat, and Torin, I think, is maybe adding some links in the chat that have it directly. But it is on it's part of a NOAA project. You can see here NOAA CCAP. So this is a data set that's available for all coastal cities. And so if you Google that, you should be able to find it. One thing I do want to highlight is the fact that this map that we're looking at, this is from 2016 data. Because that's the most recent year that we have high resolution land cover data for. For many of you, particularly those of you who have been in municipalities that have had some big storms in the last, 8 years or whatever, you might be concerned that this is not going to be reflective of some of the tree losses due to things like emerald ash borer, some of the large storms we've had. And I think that is a concern. The 2021 data is coming out hopefully soon. And so that will be posted on this website and should be easily accessible when that becomes available. But for right now, 2016 is the data set that we're working off of. So I'm going to toggle back now to my actually, no, I'm not going to toggle back to my PowerPoint. I'm going to go show you another resource that is available to some of your municipalities if you're trying to look at tree cover, and that's American Forest's Tree Equity Score. So American Forest is a nonprofit. They developed something called the Tree Equity Score. Unfortunately, it's only available for some municipalities. They did use a size cutoff. So if you are one of our smaller, more rural communities, there won't be coverage on this tool for you. And actually, let me zoom out really quickly so you can see the coverage in our state. So you can see all of the cities that are highlighted in the green and orange. Those are cities where there's coverage for, so all along our coastline and throughout central Connecticut. But there are patches that aren't covered in eastern and western parts of the state. What I like about the Tree Equity Score is the Tree Equity Score, I think, is a little bit easier to digest in terms of, lay audiences. So American Forest has basically created what they consider an equity score based off of a variety of different variables that include tree cover and other social indicators like percentage of people in poverty, percentage of people of color, vulnerable populations. They included some temperature, et cetera. And so that kind of gives these scores and you can compare within. So again, I'm going to draw your attention to this Long Wharf neighborhood that I highlighted before. Tree Equity Score has given this a score of 19, and that's in comparison to the Westville neighborhood, which has a score of 100. So again, another prioritization tool. One thing I like about this tool is you can adjust these filters. So American Forest has kind of set their own formula for what they think, is tree equity, but it can be very personalized. So you can decide that you want something like tree canopy cover to be weighted less, or you want something like poverty to be weighted less. You can make all of those adjustments. And then you can also turn on and off filters. So you can use this map to just look at tree canopy cover, or just look at people in poverty. So you can kind of fiddle with it yourself. It's not going to give you that high resolution data that I just showed you through Yukon Clear, but for a lot of purposes, it at least gives you enough of a snapshot to try and make those prioritizations in terms of where to target your investments. And while not every community is included, there is pretty good coverage throughout our state. So it's a great tool to have in your back pocket. All right, let me get back to my PowerPoint now. So those are some of the tools that are available to you for examining tree cover. We also have a plantable space assessment that is coming soon and will be hosted on Yukon Clear's website. And I included a snapshot of what that looks like here. So this is a map that we developed by taking that high resolution land cover data and then bringing in some other data sets in terms of where there are overhanging utility lines, where there are wetland soils. And we kind of pulled all of that together to create a series of maps that show where there is tree cover and then highlight where there's a lot of opportunity to plant trees, taking into consideration things like overhanging utility lines, other infrastructure conflicts. And we also highlighted in this tannish color areas that are impervious surface, but impervious surface that could be removed and converted to a tree pit or a planting space. And this is really important because a lot of our municipalities, we hear all the time that there's just not space to plant trees. And in a lot of areas, it's because there aren't, there's no tree pits or areas to plant along the right of way. And so this tool identifies some of the areas where you can actually, and we have cities like New Haven, for example, that cut concrete and put in tree pits. Obviously, you have to make sure you're in compliance with ADA requirements for sidewalks and stuff like that. But this is another tool that I wanted to flag that will be coming soon. So that's sort of the second piece. And again, a really important piece to kind of just like taking that bird's eye view of your municipality and thinking about where you want to focus your efforts. The other step, and again, this was part of the original action, was to review municipal policy priorities and practices. And this relates really closely to things like tree ordinances, which are local laws that establish policies for the way a community wants to maintain and protect its trees. And so they can set standards for selecting, planting, and maintaining community trees. For our cities that are here on the call right now and already have a tree city designation, you already have an ordinance, so you're really close to accomplishing Action 3.9. So I'd encourage you all to pursue the additional actions within 3.9 if you haven't already. But tree ordinances are a really important way to, really cater your local law towards what you feel, what sort of priorities you want to set. Hartford is kind of an interesting city in that they have an ordinance that includes protection of trees on private property. And that's a really interesting piece because in a lot of cities, a lot of our forest cover is on private property. And so having ordinances that establish some protection for those trees is an important way to protect tree cover and to work towards increasing it. I'm not going to click on each of these links. I'll let you all do that in your own time, but we have a lot of resources on our DEP website that kind of walk you through step by step how to develop tree ordinances, provide some examples of ordinances in Connecticut. And again, this is something that the Urban Forestry Program is here to help with. I worked with Trumbull very closely this past year to help them develop an ordinance and provided a lot of feedback. So if it's something you're interested in pursuing, please do reach out to me. The other actions we wanted to encourage municipalities to take a step towards were to complete tree inventories and or management plans. So tree inventories, unlike the tree cover assessment, where you're taking this bird's eye view and you're just really looking kind of like big picture, where are there trees, where are there not trees. With a tree inventory, you're looking at where there are trees, what species are they, how big are they, what kind of condition are they in. So in a city, this is what a tree inventory often looks like. You can see each of these green dots is a tree that has been mapped. And again, I know I'm drawing really heavily from the city of New Haven. I live in New Haven and I've worked closely with New Haven, but they really do have some a lot of really, excuse me, I'm like so bad at toggling between talking and changing my screen. But New Haven really does have a lot of resources that I want to highlight. So I just want to show what a tree inventory looks like. And I'm going to use New Haven's as an example. Stop share screen. So this is not, this is, oh my gosh. Here we go. So this is New Haven's tree inventory. They're using a software called Tree Keeper. There's lots of different proprietary softwares that you can purchase. And one thing that the Urban Forestry Program is working towards is purchasing a statewide tree inventory software system. So that would mean rather than relying on each individual municipality to purchase their own proprietary software, which can be really expensive, the state would have an inventory software that was available for use for any municipality that was interested. But what this looks like is going out in the field, mapping each individual tree, and then recording the species and the size and any additional information that you want to provide. So you can see here, this one that I clicked on is a London plane tree that has a DBH. If you're not familiar, DBH is a standard way of measuring trees. This is has a DBH of 13. So this is a really important tool. You know, some of you, before you all hopped on the call, I was talking with Jess and Torin about beech leaf disease and what a devastating impact that's having here in Connecticut. One thing we have to be really careful about, particularly in urban areas where we do a lot of tree planting, is overplanting individual species or genera, because you end up really compromising diversity and making yourself very vulnerable to invasive pests. And, you know, again, New Haven used to be the elm city. Elms were all wiped out because of a disease called Dutch elm disease. And so in my mind, a tree inventory really should be the first step in any tree planting program, because how do you know what species you should be planting unless you know which species you already have in your community? So completing a tree inventory is one of the steps to complete. This can be as big or as little as you want it to be. I think a full city inventory is a massive undertaking and can be really expensive. One great way to start an inventory is, if your city is planting new trees, to just start recording the species, size, and location of every tree that gets planted. So you don't have to start cataloging all the trees already in the ground, but for new trees in the ground moving forward, it's really important to capture their location, species, size, and condition. And the tree inventory can be citywide, or you can just select certain blocks. So it doesn't have to be a massive undertaking. Management plans are kind of the other piece of this, and management plans typically are built off of things like tree inventories, or if you're in a more rural municipality, maybe you're not doing a full tree inventory, but you're installing a series of plots, and based off of those plots, recording size and species of trees, so you can understand kind of what is the composition and size distribution of your forest. That a management plan takes that information and kind of sets some goals for the future and makes recommendations. I'm highlighting here Hartford's tree canopy action plan. This again was a huge, ambitious undertaking citywide. They did a ton of work, but one thing that Hartford was able to accomplish out of this is they were able to set a goal of increasing their tree cover citywide to 35%. And they were able to actually figure out how many trees they would have to plant and where they would have to plant them in order to get to that goal. So it's really important for establishing those expectations, and also is really valuable from an advocacy standpoint, because until you have the data to support, the need to invest in trees and invest in planting, it's really hard to get funding and support for it. Hartford's Tree Canopy Action Plan is really impressive and definitely worth pursuing, but could also be a little ambitious for some communities. So management plans can also be for an individual parcel. So also in Hartford, in addition to their citywide management plan, they have a stewardship plan for a forested park within the city called Keeney Park. And so and a lot of our municipalities have management plans for individual parcels, either town-owned parcels, city forests, whatever. And this counts towards Action 3.9 because it indicates some sort of data collection and then using that data to inform some management recommendations, and is sort of a roadmap for moving forward. So on our DEEP website, we have some examples of inventories and management plans here in Connecticut. We also have a grant program that is specifically for funding management plans and inventories, and that's the America the Beautiful grant program. The program's closed right now. It'll probably reopen this summer. But it's a grant program that is available to nonprofits and municipalities throughout the state to pursue inventories and management plans specifically. So we have some funding available to support these types of projects. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the service forestry program, because as I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, our service forestry program can work on municipally owned properties. And so this is a map that's showing you we have 3 service foresters in our state, and they kind of have broken up the state into thirds in terms of where they work. But here I've highlighted a project that was done by Dave Beers, one of our service foresters in the Western District. So this map in the middle is a public school in Westport. And as you can see, the school has a bunch of forested areas that surround it. And they wanted to have a service forester come out and walk the parcel with them, talk a little bit about what the, sort of through a forester's eyes, what you see, and give some management recommendations. And so Dave did that, and he then shared this sort of final report with the community. These are also reports that can be used towards Action 3.9. So if you have town-owned parcels and you want a service forester to come out and visit, certainly it's worth pursuing to get credit towards Action 3.9, but it's also just worth pursuing because our service forestry team is so fantastic, and they are able to provide a lot of recommendations in terms of how to manage these forests, whether they see issues in terms of invasive species, et cetera. So in this last part of the talk, I'm really just going to focus on the best practices and programs that can be implemented towards Action 3.9. And so even though, again, I think we think of tree planting as like the #1 thing in urban forestry, we're really not talking about it until the very end. And that's because I really think tree planting should come after these previous steps have already been done. But once you've got your advocacy group, you've assessed tree cover, you've identified the areas you need to invest in, you've done a little bit of maybe an inventory management plan. That's when you can start to get credit for things like tree planting, outreach and engagement projects. If you're in a more rural community, maybe your best management practice is going to involve more management projects on like municipal woodlands, so invasive management or something like that. And so I'm not going to, some of the ones we highlighted, again, I think this is not an exclusive list, but some of the things we highlighted were, as part of your inventory, you might add a layer to look at tree health and condition, or you might actually go out and do some proactive maintenance on existing trees. So again, in urban forestry, we get so excited about planting trees, but rotational pruning and maintaining existing canopy, I would argue is actually more important than planting new trees, or maybe not more important, but equally as important, because that's, the canopy that we see now. That's the canopy we see when we look at these land cover or tree cover maps. And if we don't protect that canopy, then, it's going to take those young trees a really long time to catch up to where our mature trees are. So things like proactive pruning, protecting our trees, stewarding our trees, making sure that they're being watered and cared for, and doing structural pruning so that our trees are more resilient in the wake of storms and things like that. A tree planting also counts as credit towards this action, a management project, and then those educational or workforce development programs. And we have a really robust menu of grant opportunities that are available to support these types of projects. I'm not going to go through all of these right now because unfortunately none of these grant programs are open, but we are expecting them to reopen soon. So the Urban Forestry Climate Change Grant Program, those are really large awards, up to $37,000. That grant program should be reopening this fall. The Community Forestry Small Grants Program at the bottom, which are much smaller awards, that's usually open in the spring. And then I just wanted, let me skip ahead. I just wanted to talk very briefly about the fact that if you weren't aware, we're seeing massive federal and state investments in urban and community forestry. And in fact, there's 1.5 billion was allocated to urban and community forests through the Inflation Reduction Act. And so the state of Connecticut has already received word that they will receive an allocation of $2.6 million to be competitively subawarded. So that's a grant program that will be soon to come through our state. We also applied for some additional supplemental funds through our state. And we know that lots of other nonprofits, like probably Arbor Day Foundation, American Forest, who knows who else, will probably be applying to provide additional subgrant programs. So we have our own menu of grant opportunities at the state, but there's going to be so much money to support these types of actions moving forward that I think funding should not be a reason to not pursue these projects. And in fact, the timing really is ripe for investing in urban and community forests, because this really is unprecedented funding. We don't know when this will come around again. And so really encourage everyone to leverage these opportunities to do some projects on the ground. I just wanted to highlight through our existing grant program some of the projects that we've funded. So we've given out about 40 grants, I think actually a little bit more than 40 throughout our state. Your municipality might be highlighted here as one of the ones in blue that received funding. And you can see we fund lots of different types of projects. So we have the title of each project in each municipality here, and it's color coded based on whether it was a tree planting project in green, an inventory or management plan in blue, or more of an education and outreach project in orange. So, we're really focused on providing assistance to communities to help them complete these projects. And that includes both financial and technical assistance. So I really do hope that you'll pursue some of these actions and reach out to our program if you need help implementing them. That's really it. I think 15 minutes is probably fantastic for for questions or follow-up if you guys want me to go back to any of these materials. I will share this PowerPoint, so you'll have access to all of the links that are in this PowerPoint. I know I didn't click on all of them, but I really wanted you all to have like sort of a packet of helpful links to use. So are there any questions in the chat that I can address?
There is one from Mary Hogue, and Mary, I don't know if you'd like to come off mute and ask it yourself, or we can read it for you as well.
I thought, hi Danica, I was wondering, I thought you said that you have inventory software that we could use, or you're looking into it?
We're looking into it. Yes. We set some funding aside to pursue it. I think one of the big challenges is the software is not so expensive to purchase at the state level, but having a staff person that can obviously monitor quality control and look at those entries is expensive. So that's something I'm still working on, but I'm very adamant that that's a program that we need to pursue. And in fact, if you look online, you'll see that a lot of other states already have paved the way for this. Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all have statewide tree inventories. And it's a really valuable way to get more of those smaller communities, or any community for that matter, to pursue an inventory that might be really cost prohibitive to purchase at the local level. Another, I think, big advantage to this is it's great in our statewide advocacy, because then we have a statewide data set that we can use to really look and see what is species composition, what is size distribution across our whole state.
Just to follow up, what we had done in Fairfield with your predecessor was a survey where they did an overlay of the census tracts, and then we did the 10% inventory in those and then extrapolated. So would you be able to help us do something like that? Because that's doable. A real actual inventory is not possible with the staff we have.
Yeah, well, I will say, I mean, I think we did fund some inventories through the last round of America the Beautiful. So I think some municipalities do hire a consulting firm or an arborist to do that work. Providing assistance with those local inventories is absolutely something the urban forestry program can do. I have a lot of capacity limitations as a one-person program, but I will say that through the funding allocation that we're receiving through the Inflation Reduction Act, we are looking to staff up, and that's just the type of technical assistance we would plan on providing to municipalities.
So the last question, are you looking at particular software, or are you just waiting to see what the funding is?
We know what the funding is. What we're waiting to do, we really want to send around a survey and ask you all what you want, right? Like we want to make sure that we're not going to be able to meet the needs of every municipality, because each municipality's needs are so different. But before we do any sort of software procurement, we are certainly going to be reaching out, sending around a survey most likely to municipalities to understand what are the features that they most value or are most looking for in a tree inventory software, so that we can get something that will meet the needs of most of our municipalities.
And I noticed you didn't mention iTree. Is that not something you want to use anymore?
Oh no, iTree is great. It's just an hour-long presentation and didn't have enough time to dive into every single tool. But if you click on the links, you'll see that there are links to iTree and how to use that resource. So iTree is definitely available. I just didn't get into it today.
Thank you.
Danica, we have another question in the chat from Christine O'Neill. And Christine, I'm happy to read it unless you'd like to come off mute and ask. So I will ask. So Christine asks, on the funding resources for best practices slide, do you have links to the final products that were produced, specifically the studies and inventories?
Yes. So we do have links through the climate change grant program to the projects that were implemented, and I'll share that link with Torin so that can be sent out to you all. The final products for the inventories and the studies that were done through America the Beautiful are not available yet, because that grant program was just rolled out last year. So municipalities are still working on those projects. So we will post that, but we don't have those yet. My expectation would be that sometime this winter, we'll have that posted somewhere on our website to share.
Thank you. And another question from Amalia Fortgang. And Amalia, feel free to come off mute if you'd like to ask the question.
Sure. Hi. I'm wondering if municipalities, if they don't have a forest management plan, if they can still submit points to the implementation and best practices section.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. I get so confused, to be honest, with the way the rolling and new credit actions work in sustainable CT. So I don't want to give you the wrong answer for that. I know that when we originally did rewrite this action, we really were trying to encourage more data-driven management, but we also didn't want communities to not be able to get credit, because inventories, as we mentioned, can be really expensive and can be a big time commitment. So I believe as long as you do that sort of canopy assessment, that like municipal assessment of kind of looking at where there are trees, where there are not trees, and then do a tree planting, you can still get credit. But we were encouraging municipalities to try and do an inventory in addition, or at least to have that sort of on the horizon to pursue down the road. But I think for the credit of like something like a tree planting or best management strategy, you just had to be able to do that kind of municipal wide canopy assessment.
And I'll piggyback on that. You can do, so I put the action in the chat earlier, but I'll put it again so it's top of the pile. But the action is set up to be almost a la carte, so you can do any of the elements that are of interest to you, depending on where you're starting from. So there might be, as Danica mentioned, sort of the ideal pathway, but sometimes you don't work in the ideal pathway. So take a look at that action. If it says the more you do, the more points you can earn, then it's basically again, a la carte. You can sort of pick and choose what works for you. So
Thank you.
other questions, feel free to come off mute or just pop them in the chat. And while you're thinking of questions, I have one. So you mentioned, Danica, that there are a bunch of funding opportunities that are coming up. How should towns sign up for those on your website, or how should they get alerts so that they know what they want to go for?
Yeah, totally. We're in the process of trying to develop an email listserv for this purpose. So I would say if you're interested, email me and I'll put my email. Well, my email's on there right now. Yeah, email me, and I'm planning to put something like that together. Historically, the program has really relied on things like tree wardens and elected officials to provide some of this messaging. But with so much funding available, we really want to make sure that we distribute it far and wide. So please do send me your email if you would like to be added to a listserv that will, get periodic updates when funding is available.
Awesome. And if you have those fun discussed before we started today, we'd be happy to share out with our member towns as well. And we also have a grants portal, which we can put a link in the chat for you folks if you're interested in seeing other funding opportunities that are available to you. Okay, that was your buffer time to have new questions. So any other questions from the group? Okay, well, Danica, thank you so much for this presentation. It's been incredibly informative. We've just gotten so much great information. I feel inspired to go out and protect the trees in my yard and in my town. So if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to Danica. You can see her email on the slide, and we will share this presentation, the recording, all of the links that we've discussed. So thanks again to Danica, and thanks to you all for joining us, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. And please do reach out if we can assist. I know there's some changes to Action 3.9, but it's mostly, a lot of the changes are in the framing, so shouldn't feel intimidating to anyone. And really, these are just like great community capacity building kind of activities. So we would be happy to support anyone in any way we can. So thank you.
Have a great day all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.